Hey everyone, I'm Magnus and welcome back to my channel. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started with today's video. Today's video is going to be on sacred space. What is sacred space? So in my previous video on energetic circle casting, I briefly described sacred space. Don't think I really described it very well, but anyway, hopefully this video will clarify a little more for you. Now, I also said in that video that I really wasn't going to give too much of a definition of it, but that's kind of a lie because I am. I give definitions, even if it's not a perfect definition. I give a definition because it's the definition that I use for it. It's the way that I learned it, the way that I perceive it, and it's the way I put it into use, into my practice. So that's why I want to give some kind of definition for it. So at least that way you can kind of understand my perception of it, and then maybe you can explore your own options of how you may perceive sacred space, whether you may agree or whether you look elsewhere for guidance on the subject. But anyway, so this is actually, I believe, lesson 7, maybe? Watch, I'm probably wrong. I will correct that if I'm wrong. But anyway, so lesson 7. What is sacred space? Sacred space is a space for magical and or spiritual workings that exist within the physical and spiritual planes. Now, the reason I describe it as existing in both the spiritual and physical plane is because of what sacred space is used for, or the types of sacred space. So typically, again, this is my perception of it, there are about 3 general types of sacred space. You have ancestral, spiritual, and religious. Now, ancestral can be something just as simple as a space that you go to honor your relatives who have passed on. You know, it can be very, very simple and just plain Jane, so to speak. You know, it doesn't have to be anything elaborate. Any of these types of sacred space doesn't have to be elaborate in any kind of way. It's really up to you to personalize it and make it your own. But when it comes to ancestral, you know, it's for honoring them, you know, honoring your past and, you know, where you came from. And it's not just for honoring the ones who have already passed. It can also be for honoring ones that still exist and the ones to come. You know, honoring and you know, respecting your ancestors and your culture. That's something that shouldn't just be looked from past experiences and past lives. It should be looked through present and future as well. So you have your ancestral sacred space that you could, you know, do any kind of honoring, or, you know, maybe if you want to do a kind of offering for your ancestors, just a thank you kind of thing for them. You can do that as well. Pretty much whatever you want, you know. Spiritual varies because what is spiritual? You know, it's a term that's the meaning drastically varies per person, culture, region, country, everything. But what is a spiritual sacred space? It can be anything from a space where you meditate to a space of doing high magical workings to simple castings. You know, it can really vary. Whatever your spiritual practice is, whatever your spiritual beliefs are, you know, you can incorporate that into your sacred space. It's a space that you incorporate this spirituality. You know, if it's something like yoga, you know, meditation. I've already said that. But anything like that, something so simple as that, as, you know, all the way up to, you know, like I say, doing other kind of magical workings, not just meditation type stuff. So spiritual can actually be religious as well, but not necessarily. Religious specifies more towards deity, whatever it is you worship. So in your sacred space, you would have stuff to represent your beliefs, your practice in your deity, your faith. So you may have little effigies or symbols around, or something like that, some kind of totem or something to represent, your deity or your belief. This would be a place that you could go to, give offerings and prayers and to do worship. It's a place that you could go to study and learn more about your belief. A great example is a church. A church is a religious sacred space. Now, I keep talking about sacred space, but how do you create sacred space? How do you go about making it sacred space? Well, it's by cleansing and purifying. So I already have a video on cleansing and purification, but you can cleanse the space with the intent of, for the purpose that you want it for. So whenever you go to cleanse your sacred space, if you want to do it for ancestral purposes, then as you're cleansing it, of the energies and stuff in there and the negative energies and whatnot, you want to be drawing in those positive energies, and you want to be drawing in those energies of family and love and stuff like that. So that way, when you start to create it, your space for your ancestors, you've already got that energy there for them, and then you just add to it and do whatever it is you want to do. But same thing with, religious or spiritual. So whatever your process of cleansing is, you can cleanse with sound, you can cleanse with smoke, you can cleanse with water, energy, many, many things you can cleanse with. So you take your choice. But whenever you go to cleanse that space, you put your intention into it. You think about why you're creating that sacred space, what it's going to be used for, and you just, as you're clearing out those energies, those negative energies and whatnot, or those excess energies, you make sure to focus on the intent of whatever you're creating it for. So now there is another type of sacred space, so to speak. Now, some people may disagree totally with this because, again, it depends on the definition of sacred space to each person. But some people say there are natural sacred spaces, mountains, rivers, certain landscapes. There might be an area where there's certain flowers or certain animals that only live in that. So it's not just because of that flower, that plant, or that animal, but that whole area is sacred because of that. So that can also go, that can vary from like tribes and natives of all sorts of different countries. There are people who have all sorts of spiritual beliefs and faiths who have certain areas for whatever reason, whether it's the waters or the minerals or something about it that's sacred to them. But typically they're about, like I say, those three general sacred spaces. Now, I do want to say, you can create a sacred space for anything. So even though I said there's kind of three, possibly like a fourth, you can create a sacred space for anything. If you're an artist and you have this kind of spiritual way about you, cleanse you a space, make it your sacred space for doing your art. Go there to feel empowered, to feel inspired. It doesn't really matter what it is you do. If you're a singer, if you write music, if you write books, novels, you can create a sacred space to do those things in. So it doesn't just have to be, spiritual, magical workings per se. That's the reason in the previous video I made the comment about not giving it a definition. It's because of that, because there really are so many definitions of it and what types of sacred spaces there are. But this is what I perceive as sacred space. Sacred spaces can have altars. They can have nothing. They can be completely empty. it really is all up to you. It can be totally elaborate, like, I mean, fancy schmancy, you know, whatever you would like. So keep that in mind whenever you go to create your sacred space. Um, Hopefully, I have covered this thoroughly, at least enough for you to grasp what a sacred space is or what your sacred space may be. Um, Feel free to, as always, leave a comment, ask some questions. I definitely enjoy answering your questions. Like, subscribe. That way you can kind of keep up to date with my new videos. I keep saying that I'm going to do one video a week or more, but it's averaging out to be about 2 every week and a half. So I guess that's about still at least 1 a week per se, but not necessarily. I think you know what I mean. Anyway, thank you for sticking around. Hopefully I explained that thoroughly for you, or at least enough. Again, give me a like, subscribe. I hope everyone is doing well. Hope the New Year's treating you well. And as always, take care, stay safe, be kind, and don't take no shit. Peace.